Okay, here's a quick update with the Thunderchild. This is a tape up. Well, the bridge isn't taped on, but most of it's taped together. Taped it together because I wanted to see where I'm going to drill the hole for the stand. I'm still thinking about how to avoid drilling a hole for a stand. I might come up with some way around that because I'd love to have this thing sitting in a cradle so I don't drill into the surface of the ship. Now, the balance point seems to be right about there. Okay, I'm going to take the bridge off so I don't break it by dropping it or something. So the balance point's running right along here. Now, if you can look at the detail on this, I can't move it in too close because we'll lose lighting on the model. There we go, I can turn the lighting a little bit. But I don't want to drill into this because there's some nice detail on the other side of the ship. So I've got to figure out how to make a stand that'll support it without drilling into it. If I figure that out, I'm going to post it. If not, there's going to be a hole right there because that's where the balance point is on this ship. Now, this is what I have done, and I'm going to undo some of the tape to show you guys what I've done. So give me a minute and we'll pull the tape off of her. Won't take long. I didn't put too much tape on her. So basically, over the last 2 days, I have sat down and cleaned up all the flash and some of the imperfections in the molding process. I have not filled any of the voids yet. That I will do tomorrow night or the next night. I should be able to get that done tomorrow night. I have a lot of time free tomorrow night. Now, the two pieces of the engineering hull. There were no voids or imperfections in these. Just a little bit of sanding, get the flash off the ends along these edges where the mold was. These two pieces were a joy to work with. They are pretty much done. For the two engine pieces, one of them was perfect. One of them had a lot of voids in it and a few bad spots. The perfect one is this one right here. I had to trim the flash on the ends of it, and I went over it all with a 600 grit sandpaper, except for where the details are, to smooth things out. There's one void on it I'm going to have to deal with, and it's right here. She's pretty hard to see because she's so small. That piece is done. This engine piece, on the worst part of it is the back spot back here. I don't know if the camera's picking this up. It picks it up some. There's a few voids and imperfections there. There is a pretty nasty mold seam mark right there. That's going to take some fill and sanding. Along the top, there's some edges along here that are grooves. I don't know how those got there other than the mold must have been getting old when they cast this piece. So this piece is going to take a little bit of work. The bridge, I had to take a file. I used a file instead of X-Acto knife for this. I have a pretty wide file assortment, and I had to cut in these windows on this side so it matched. Oops, carpet monster was hungry, I guess. So it matched the windows on this side over here. I had to file in this side to match this side. Other than that, I went over this piece lightly with some 600 grit sandpaper. It's done too. This, thought it was an engineering bay. Wrong. Torpedo bay. This model supposedly has a lot of torpedo bays. It has 6 backwards facing and 7 forward facing torpedoes. For the most part, this piece was good. The tricky spots were right up in here and in here. And the back part, I almost got a little too carried away with that, and that's a little bit more rounded off than it probably should be. But it looks good. I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm counting this piece done. There were no voids in this piece. Going back to the bridge for a minute, one tiny void in the very back. The camera should be picking that up. But other than that, this is pretty done too. Which gets me to the saucer section. This thing. This had to have been on the last run or two of that particular mold series, because Lots of voids on this thing. I didn't catch them in the first video. All along this edge right here are micro voids. Okay? When we look at the main deflector dish, there's some voids along this edge here. Okay? There was a mold imperfection there that I took out, and I rescored these lines along here. There is a void there. The deflector dish itself had some really nastiness inside there, and it came out with a file. Didn't want to use an X-Acto knife, and I'm not a big fan of using Dremels on things, so I didn't use the Dremel. I just used a very sharp pointed file and got in there and started filing. I'm probably post a picture of that at the end of the video too. The bad spot on this thing was these edges along here. There's a nice groove that runs along inside these edges, and when I turn it over to this side, the camera should be picking that up. See all those dots in that edge? Those are voids. That groove wasn't even there. This was a very bad casting job on this edge of this piece. I had to cut that groove in there. It is missing some detail. Right here, there is supposed to be a notch very similar to that notch there. What I think I'm going to do is take some strip styrene, cut a little pieces of it off, and reinforce these notches. These are supposed, sorry, I had a cat who's trying to knock over the camera. These notches are supposed to be much more pronounced than they are. That one's completely missing. So I'm going to take some strip styrene and reinforce it. These edges were not even along this whole side. This side over here was perfect. So what I have left to do on the saucer section is fill voids. Once I'm done with that, I can assemble the model and see if there's any fill lines to do, and then she's ready for paint. I should be able to put some paint on her by this weekend if I keep going at the rate I'm going. Well, that's it for this update. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll be back soon.